Hey, Diane, what kind of day is it?
It's a new day.
It isn't. Is it a happy new day?
It is a happy
Well,
new
that's
day.
good. I got a question for you. Who do you think would be happier? Somebody who just won the lottery or someone who was in an accident and paralyzed?
I would hope the one that won the lottery. That's just me, though.
A guy named Mark Recklow did a huge study, wrote a book called Destination Happiness.
Okay.
And one of the things he discovered was people who won the lottery, of course, were very happy for a little while.
Okay.
And after 6 months, they had returned to the same level of happiness they'd been before they won. And people who were in an accident and were paralyzed, of course, were very unhappy. But after 6 months, they too had returned to the same level of happiness. He went on, college professors always after tenure, trying to get that thing that says they can't be fired anymore. And every college professor is looking for that. So he asked college professors, would you be happy for the rest of your life if you got tenure? And they all said, yeah.
Yes.
And would you be sad if you didn't? They all said, yeah. And you know what? He studied professors who got tenure were really happy for 6 months. And those who didn't were really unhappy for 6 months. So, what is it that makes us happy? I guess we'll talk about that today.
Sounds like a good idea.
Let's get after it.
So if someone is sick or has surgery or is going through a tough time, one of the things I like to do is, the only response I generally have is, can I bring you food? And if it's in the winter time or if it's colder outside, I always make my grandma's homemade chicken noodle soup. And that's what I like to take to people. But in the summertime, chicken noodle soup isn't as, it's kind of heavy and not as satisfying. So I have my summer or warmer weather, it's shrimp pasta salad. Now it has shrimp in it, it has the little noodles that are made out of vegetables, rotini kind of thing, and it has, peppers and tomato and cucumber and lots of feta cheese and Italian dressing. Now I have to admit, usually I just use a bottle of salad dressing, zesty Italian dressing. I just pour it on there. But on occasion, I'm making it and I realize I don't have a bottle of zesty Italian dressing, so I have to make it from scratch. Now, the first time I did this, I realized, Italian dressing has olive oil, some really good olive oil, so I usually have that. And you use red or white vinegar and oregano and basil and crushed red pepper or just an Italian blend, spices and onion powder and garlic powder and salt and pepper. But I never really had a recipe to go by. So what I find myself doing is mixing in the olive oil, and then the vinegar, and then the spices, and then I stir it up, whisk it up a little bit, and then take a spoon, and then just taste it. And then I'll usually find, maybe a little more garlic, and I'll add a little more garlic, etc., salt, pepper, whatever, until I'm very satisfied, and I'm like, yes, this tastes pretty darn close to what I would get out of a bottle. Well, I think happiness is like that. We think if we're going to be happy, maybe we just need a little more of something. Maybe we need more satisfaction in our job. Maybe we need more friends. Maybe we need more money. Maybe we need more activities. Maybe we need less activities. We just think we want to take something away or add something to the mix. But I think real happiness is something we all have all the ingredients for right here. And I think when we look out to try to fill the holes we fill in here, we're looking in the wrong place because we have everything we need within ourselves. We have the knowledge of who we belong to and what our job, what our vocation in life is, to share that love with everyone else. And when we recognize that, we get the recipe just right.
We're continuing in our sermon series called Misusing the Bible. It's about scripture passages that are often taken out of the context so their meaning gets distorted. And today we're going to be looking at one of Jesus' major teachings. We're in the Gospel of Luke, beginning at chapter 6, verse 20. Let's listen for God's word. Then he looked up at his disciples and said, "Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who are hungry now, for you will be filled. Blessed are you who weep now, for you will laugh. Blessed are you when people hate you, when they exclude you, revile you, and defame you on account of the Son of Man. Rejoice in that day and leap for joy, for surely your reward is great in heaven. For that is what the ancestors did to the prophets. But woe to you who are rich, for you've received your consolation. Woe to you who are full now, for you will be hungry. Woe to you who are laughing now, for you will mourn and weep. Woe to you when all speak well of you, for that is what their ancestors did to the false prophets." May God bless us with understanding for these words. Well, we are doing this series on scripture texts that often get misused. And if you remember last week, we talked about how we are to mature in our faith. You know, we are born helpless, and so everything happens according to us. If a baby is uncomfortable, it will cry out till it gets its needs met. And as we grow, we are supposed to be able to look more to the outside. And mature Christians are those who can focus away from themselves. G.K. Chesterton, the British theologian, one time wrote that the problem is not that Christianity has been tried and found wanting. The problem is it's been found difficult and not really tried. And today's scripture really follows along sort of that path. This has been called Jesus' Sermon on the Plain, his major teaching in Luke's gospel, and it's related closely to Jesus' Sermon on the Mount that we find in Matthew's Gospel, chapters 5 through 7. The thing is, it's probably the same teaching. We have to remember that none of the eyewitnesses to this teaching wrote anything down that survives, and when it was written down, it was about 50 years after the fact. And I think to myself, if I were to try and tell a story of what I was doing 50 years ago, somebody else who was there might remember the details a little bit differently, and that doesn't really matter. It's not the details, but there are some major differences in these two teachings that I think we need to look at. I think this is the reason that so often we sort of ignore Luke's version and focus on Matthew. So what I want to start with is, let's do a little bit of a comparison. Some of the places where they're similar. So we'll start here. This is from Matthew's gospel. He quotes Jesus as saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Luke remembers it this way: "Blessed are you poor, for yours is the kingdom of God." Now, there are a couple of big differences there. Number one, we talk about the kingdom of heaven or the kingdom of God. They're really the same thing. A lot of times we sort of misunderstand what Jesus talked about when he was talking about the kingdom. I remember a Bible study group one time, and I asked them what they thought the kingdom of God was, and they said they thought that was heaven, where we go after we die. But that's not what Jesus was talking about. Jesus was talking about how we should live our lives right here, right now. The difference there is quite simple. The author of Matthew's gospel was very Jewish, and the Jews would not pronounce the name of God. They thought it was too holy to pronounce. So instead of saying the kingdom of God, he simply changed that to the kingdom of heaven. But the bigger difference is this. Matthew says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." Luke says, "Blessed are you who are poor in spirit or broke." Then Matthew goes on and says, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." Now Luke is very similar here. He puts his up and it says, "Blessed are you who weep now, for you shall laugh." We go on and he says, Matthew goes on and he says, "Blessed are those who are meek, for they shall inherit the earth." This one's not in Luke at all, and neither is this next one. He says, blessed are those who hunger and thirst. Oh, this one is, sorry. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be satisfied. Luke puts that one this way. He says, blessed are you who hunger now, for you shall be satisfied. Let's talk a little bit about those differences that we've seen so far, because I think they're pretty major. Blessed are the poor in spirit. That usually means people who are humble, right? I don't have any problem with that. However, Luke says, Jesus said, blessed are the poor. I don't know about you, but I've never felt very blessed when I'm poor. Matthew says, quotes Jesus as saying, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. That one's easy for me, because who knows what righteousness really means? I mean, it's a word we use around church all the time, but I've never really heard anybody define it. If you want to get right down to brass tacks, it actually means getting right with God. Only who can define that? It's just kind of out there. So blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Luke, however, quotes Jesus as saying, blessed are those who are hungry. I don't feel blessed. In fact, if you look at my profile, you notice that hunger is not one of those gifts that I've sought after much from God. There's a difference there. All right, let's go on. These are from Matthew's gospel again, and they're not in Luke. He says, blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Now we come to a major part again. Matthew quotes Jesus saying, blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For so the ancestors persecuted the prophets who were before you. Now Luke is very similar on this one, really means the same thing, but let's take a look at it. Woe to you when people speak well of you, for so their fathers did to the false prophets. Blessed are you when people hate you, when they exclude you and revile you and cast out your name as evil on account of the Son of Man. Rejoice in that day and leap for joy, for behold, your reward is great in heaven, for so their ancestors did to the prophets. So if you think about that, when you're being excluded for something, when everybody's been invited to the party but you, do you feel blessed? When people are making snide comments behind your back and saying nasty things about you, do you feel blessed? Not really. And then Luke goes on and he includes some things that Matthew didn't, and they're on the opposite side. Let's take a look real quick here. He says, but woe to you who are rich, for you have received your consolation, and woe to you who are full now, for you shall hunger, and woe to you who laugh now, for you shall mourn and weep. So the difference isn't that Luke simply left out some words that Matthew put in, but Luke was quite serious about the direction he was taking. You know, last week we talked a little bit about how faith is presented. Remember, I told you there was a study of young people, and the three words that describe how we present our faith, our religion to people, and they are moralistic, therapeutic, deism. Remember, moralistic was that God wants you to be nice instead of a jerk. But today, what I want to focus on is that middle one, therapeutic, that religion should make us feel good. So that comes to the question, what makes you happy? There's a story about a man who went to a holy man. He was sick and he wanted to be cured. And so the holy man met with him, and the sick man began to describe all of his ailments and his pains and all the bad things that were happening to him. And when he got all done, the holy man looked at him and said, do you really want to be cured? The man looked at him and said, well, of course I do. Why else would I come here? And the holy man said, most people don't want to be cured because that's painful. Most people just come for relief. What do we come for? What do we come to Jesus for? Do we want our lives to actually be made better, or are we just looking for relief. How are we going to live our lives? There's a story of a woman who had been diagnosed with a terminal illness. She only had about a year left to live, and so she decided that before she died, she wanted an artist to make a portrait of her so her husband could hang that on the wall in their home and remember her. And so she went and sat down with the artist for her first sitting, and the artist began to sketch out, and as he's working, she asked him a question. She said, "Could you paint my portrait with me wearing a gorgeous emerald and diamond necklace?" The artist said, "Of course he could." In fact, he said, "Why don't you bring it with you at your next sitting?" And the woman said, "Oh, she couldn't do that because she didn't own a necklace like that." And the artist said, "Well, then why do you want me to paint your portrait with you wearing it?" And the woman said, "Well, I noticed that my husband now has his eye on the woman down the street. And if they get together after I'm dead, I want her to see that portrait and spend the rest of her life looking for that necklace." Do we really want to be cured? Or do we just want to feel good? Are we looking for relief? What Jesus is saying here is that being in his kingdom, being part of that kingdom, means that we want to be cured. And it's not always going to be easy. Sometimes it could even get a little painful. What he's saying is, if you go back to Luke, Jesus had called the disciples, and they were following him everywhere. There were 12 people who were spending their time. And why? Were they going to write things down and publish books and self-help guides? Well, as far as we know, they didn't write anything. No, he had them follow him so they could learn how to live in the kingdom, so that they could teach by example. And somehow, we don't know exactly what happened. There's no record, but they did it. They lived long enough to teach other people by examples. See, and so if you go to that next note, the value of your life won't be determined by how many years you live. It'll be determined by how you use those years. Back in Jesus' day, the average lifespan for an adult male was about 35 years. So they felt it was a great blessing from God if they got to live into old age. And what Jesus is trying to say here is, it's not just the number of years, but it's what you do with those years. What he said all along is that each and every one of you are unique and have been specially gifted by God. And the question is, are you sharing? Are you sharing those gifts? See, here's the thing. God doesn't call us to make the world a little bit better. God calls us to make a better world. And that means that we have to be givers. Last week we talked about it in terms of maturity, but today Jesus talks about blessed are the poor, happy are the poor. Do you feel happy when you're broke? I don't. Blessed are the hungry. I don't desire to be hungry all the time. So what's he trying to say? He's trying to say is that we need to be giving people. It's all about attitude. If you go to that here's what he's trying to say is, if you're not a giver, if you're a grabber instead of a giver, you better enjoy what you have, because it's all you're ever going to get. If you're not a giver, people aren't going to give back to you. So everything you have is all you'll ever get. And so you should enjoy it now. When he talks about being poor, he's talking about people who are givers. And each and every one of you is gifted. There's a story about some vandals who broke into one of those big box kind of home improvement stores, you know, the kind that sell tools and lumber and furniture and everything. They broke in and did their thing all night long. Nobody knew a thing until the next morning. The workers came, they opened the door, they went inside. They couldn't see that the vandals had even been there until the customers showed up and started to check out. Discovered that they were trying to sell screws for $8 a piece, hammers for 17 cents, television sets for $295 and screwdrivers for $2,000. What the vandals had done is they came into the hardware store, this big box store, and they changed the price tags on everything. That's what Jesus is trying to do. He's trying to get us to change the price tags, to reset our priorities, not as something as, how is it going to work for me, but how can I give? And here's what he's saying is, if you want to know the abundance of life, this is how you do it. That givers live on a higher level than most people. See, he came out of a culture where the church was, the religion was led by a group of people called the Pharisees. And what they had was a list of don'ts. Don't do this, don't do that. Make sure you're not doing something else. And what Jesus said is, this should be a faith of do. Do give away. Do share. Understand, we've grown up in a culture of where we prize the rugged individual, where we try and do everything on our own. And if that's what we prize, that's how we're going to live, is alone. But we weren't created to be alone. And so Jesus is trying to help us understand. So Luke could say, quote Jesus as saying, blessed are the poor. Blessed are those who are hungry. Jesus calls us to do. And it's more about attitude, about that desire to give, than it is even about how much we give. There's a story about after a great earthquake in Alaska, the governor came on the TV to try and bring hope to the people, to let them know what the government was doing to try and restore things. Houses had collapsed and utilities were down and even forests had been destroyed. And as a part of his speech, he pulled up a little postcard he said had been sent to him by a little boy from Seattle, Washington, who'd heard about the earthquake. And taped to the postcard were 2 nickels. And the message said this: use these wherever you need them. If you need more, let me know. It's not about how much. It's about that attitude that I want to be a giving person. That's what Jesus was trying to say. That's why he came at it. And it seems so harsh, because he's trying to say, if you're not a giving person, you're never going to be part of the kingdom. You're never going to quite get in. You can have all the stuff in the world, but stuff will never make you happy. Later in this chapter, Luke is going to quote Jesus as what we call the golden rule. Remember the golden rule? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's all. Live that rule every single day. When John D. Rockefeller was a millionaire by the time he was 23 years old. By the time he was 53, he was a billionaire. And that is back when $1 billion was a lot of money. But he wasn't happy. At 53, he'd gone to his doctor because his health was deteriorating, and the doctor thought he would only live for another year. He had ulcers and all kinds of gastrointestinal problems, and the doctor didn't think he'd survive. And when he went home, he began to take stock of his life. He'd spent his whole life as a grabber, as somebody who was always looking for more. What could he get? And he decided at that moment he was going to become a giver. He was 53 years old. He had over $1 billion, and yet at that point, all he could eat were crackers and milk. He had the money. He could buy any restaurant in the world. He could have any kind of food delivered to him that he wanted, but all he could eat were crackers and milk. And so he started to give away his fortune. Hospitals and libraries and churches and on and on. And he kept giving money, and the more he gave, the better his health became. He began to do away with the stress that came from always wanting to get more. And he began to enjoy his life. He lived until his mid-90s because he had become a giver. What's the world going to say about you at the end of your life? There was a guy back in '89, he did a survey of some prominent people in his community about what they wanted on their tombstone, what they wanted their epitaph to be. And one guy, I thought this was kind of cute, he said he wanted the mind of Plato, the heart and soul of Socrates, but by his life, he spent most of his time with good old mediocrities. I thought that was kind of cute. One other guy said, though, he cares. And finally, the one I liked the best said, wanted on his tombstone, "Dear God, thanks for letting me visit. I had a great time." What's it going to say? Are you going to be a taker, or do you trust God enough to be a giver? Do you trust God enough to say, I think I'll try this. I will spend more time thinking of others than I think of myself. That's what faith is about. Trusting that what Jesus said, even in these hard passages, will make us better. Let's pray. God, we thank you. We thank you for giving to us again and again, but not only that, giving us the pathway to an abundant life, pathway that leads to your kingdom. Help us, O God. Help us to put away our own needs, that we might discover the joys of being poor, of being hungry, that we might know all the benefits of being with you. We pray all that in Jesus' name. Amen. Now I'm going to ask you, like we always do, to join me in reading our New Day Creed. Let's read it together. It's not about me. I give myself freely and totally to God, that I may be used for the building of God's kingdom, for the care of God's world, to love God's children, all of God's children, even those who are not like me, even those who do not like me, that God's kingdom might become real, and I might be blessed and be made complete. Well, my friends, nobody said it would be easy. The Christian faith has never been tried and found wanting, as Chesterton said. Sometimes it's been found difficult and not really tried. That's my challenge. Go out and try it this week. See how good you feel, and I'll see you again next week. God bless.